Hello everyone, Paul Elam here again with A Voice for Men and part two of my talk regarding waging war with women. And I'll pick up where I left off, and this is really the good part. Whether any of this happens on a large scale anytime soon, the practice of treating women like absolute equals can bring really good things into the lives of any man who does it. I have not taken financial responsibility for a woman in a long, long time. Actually, since that date. It has not stopped me from getting laid or cut me out of female companionship if and when I want it. The result is that I don't ever feel like a woman is a financial anchor around my neck. I won't let them be. There are women who will carry their weight financially. You just have to cull them out from the majority of leeches to get to them, but they are there. And for a little trade secret here, just in terms of getting sexual satisfaction, there are plenty of women who will date men who pay the way and lavish them with gifts, but will then drop them like a lead brick and go crawl between the sheets with a guy who won't spend a nickel on them because he's the guy whose indifference to her princess bullshit gets her dripping wet. Let me illustrate this further. Many years ago, after a divorce, I was at a crossroads in my life. Even after a healthy period of grieving, I felt awkward about dating and was pretty unsure of myself when it came to women. And it suddenly occurred to me at 36 years old that I didn't want to do things with women like I'd ever done them before. Like any normal man, I wanted a connection with a woman, wanted sex, but I had realized that following my natural instincts about that had always led to a lot of difficulties and a lot of drama. So I started asking myself for the first time in my life, what is it about some men that set them aside when it came to women? Why did some guys, even ones without money or looks, always seem to have women around them? Why did other guys with good jobs, good-looking guys, whatever, guys that were very chivalrous, always seemed to end up standing there with a bunch of flowers wilting in their hand while the woman of their desire hopped on to ride bitch on a Harley behind some guy who acted like he didn't give a shit if she came or went? And of course the answer was right there in front of me. The answer was, despite my logic screaming that it wasn't so, that the guy on the Harley didn't give a shit. It was his indifference that made the difference. So with nothing to lose and a newfound determination to change my life, I set about going after that difference. And I ended up kicking myself for not having done it 20 years earlier. In a nutshell, here's what I did. I joined a social club. Which one doesn't matter. There are thousands of them. The point is that these people met to party and do other things on a regular basis. This time, rather than scan the group for a woman I was interested in and look to grab her attention, I simply went there and interacted with people as though they were all men. Yes, you heard that right. I treated the women more or less the same way I treated men. I showed no sexual interest in them at all, even the slightest bit. I arrived at events late and left early. I carried myself with absolute confidence even when I didn't feel that way. I made it a point many times when talking to women to let something else other than another woman get my attention and then to say excuse me and go off to involve myself in whatever else it was, as long as it didn't involve them. I also carried an air of preoccupation, as though there was always somewhere else I wanted to be. To cement this, I checked my watch as though concerned about the time pretty regularly. After just a few weeks of this, a woman who I actually did have my eye on secretly stopped me on my way out of an event. We were in a loud club, so she had to lean in and talk into my ear, and clearly pushed her tits into my chest as she did so. "You're always leaving," she said. And I knew right then and there that I had her. I made up some shit about being busy, but told her that I would see her the next time, putting my hand on her ass as I spoke. Well, the next time she went home with me, and what followed was even more amazing. From that point on, the women in that particular group were lining up, not to date me, but to fuck me. I even had one approach me at another event and ask me, "When is it my turn?" Now, guys, this is not bragging about exploits. There is something very valuable here for men and for MRAs. By simply removing myself from seeking women's attention, I got it. But much more importantly, I changed the dynamics of power between myself and women. Instead of me picking a woman and trying to figure out how to get her attention, the whole goddamn lot of them were picking me and trying to get mine. And that, my friends, is about a whole lot more than getting pussy. It's about understanding that for eons men have played the mating game by acting like trained seals, balancing balls on their noses and clapping their flippers in hopes of being tossed a piece of fish. And once they get that fish, they do everything they can to keep it coming from the same source. This is ultimately the power of women in our feminazi society. For if men were not ever in search of that scrap of dead fish, if their baskets were full without having to work for it, none of this bullshit we fight against in the men's rights movement would even be happening. Feminists had it totally right in their approach to gaining power. All politics are personal. It is the mainstay of their movement, and why shame is such an effective tool to keep men's mouths shut as they go about undermining everything in sight. On the front page of my website, it says in bold letters, "Suppose they had a gender war and men showed up." Well, truth be told, there is no more powerful way for men to show up than in reversing the power flow that goes to women and directing it toward men.